Hello and welcome to my Metroid Prime 4 impressions. Currently, I'm about 20 hours into the game. Take that with a grain of salt because I do tend to take my time with Metroid titles. I search every last little nook and cranny. I've been crunching into every single green crystal I can find in the desert, so just bear that in mind. There's quite a few things I'd like to go over in this video, so let's not waste any time and jump right in. I wanted to talk about why I love this game so much. I am having a really good time with this game. In fact, I don't think there's anything I dislike about it. There are some aspects I would say I don't like as much as the rest of the game, but I wouldn't say anything is downright bad or unenjoyable or doesn't provide at least a standard quality of entertainment. So, one of the biggest things I like about this game is the modernity of how they present characters and personality. I think this is something that has been sorely missing from the series. And I don't blame previous games because they were made several decades ago and for a sub HD system at the time. But I really like the Galactic Federation troopers. I've always felt they've been a part of the Prime series since it began. And I've always felt that they should be expanded upon. They shouldn't just be these nameless soldiers in the background. I want to see some new characters. I want to see some bespoke personalities. I don't want them to dominate the entire game, but I do want them to get a little bit of spotlight, and I think Prime 4 strikes a really good balance of that. I've enjoyed my time with all of the Galactic Federation troopers thus far. I think Miles McKenzie is definitely my favorite. I really enjoy his personality. I like his sense of humor and the level of detail. Like, for example, when you first meet him and he's hanging on to that latch for the cargo bay, I decided to scan him. And he says, "Did you just scan me? What does it say?" It's just that kind of dry humor he has. I went up and talked to him just randomly at base camp, and he starts, going on because he's really, what's the word for it? Passionate. He's very passionate about his technical expertise. And he's telling me about this problem he solved, and suddenly the hologram goes haywire. And he goes, "That is a feature." And he slams his fist down on the terminal. It's just hilarious. I started shooting him just to see some of the things he would say. I won't spoil everything, but I just think it's hilarious, and I love the level of detail that Retro has put into this game. There's so many different lines. They're not just giving you two lines on a loop, constantly repeating. So yeah, that's really great. I also enjoy the sniper. I forget his name. What is it? Rieger Takabe, something like that. He's a great character. Kind of solo, sticks to himself, but it fits his character, I think. And then there is Ezra Duke, the Colonel. And there's Private Nora Armstrong. And there is one more I haven't ran into yet. But I just think all of these characters are very different from each other. They all bring their own personality to the table. And it's kind of the spice of life, variety, as they say. So that's actually been the biggest thing I like about this game. I think they struck the perfect balance. You don't see too much of them, but they give you just enough to make you care about them. So the game's not just some boring, long, silent, 100% solo experience. I get that's what they did in Prime. Honestly, I wasn't as big of a fan of Prime. I think it's the worst in the trilogy. I think Prime 2 Echoes is the best. Prime 3 is next, and I would put Prime 1 last. That's not to denigrate Prime 1. I think all of them are 10 out of 10 games. I just think Prime 1 is the weakest link in the chain. And I will say, I think Prime 4 is better than both Prime 1 and Prime 3 Corruption. Prime 3 Corruption, people forget, it had a hub world just like Prime 4. It took several minutes to fly from one world to another. just like Prime 4. In fact, Prime 4 is actually faster. It only takes 60, maybe 120 seconds to drive across Saul Valley. I can get from one zone to another in 1 or 2 minutes. That's it. It took at least that long to get in your ship, do all the little Wii motion gestures, do the flying off cutscene, go through space, come land on a different planet, get back out of the ship. It took just as long, if not more. So I really don't understand the complaint. I think that the gameplay when you're in Saul Valley is far more engaging than just watching a ship fly through space or doing some little Wiimote push-pull gesture, right? Even if it's not, like your favorite, it's better than what we had before. It's more engaging than what we had before. And to be perfectly honest, I kind of enjoy riding Viola around, crunching into the green crystals. I don't want to do it for 15 straight hours, don't get me wrong. But, cruising through the desert for 5 or 10 minutes just to get a breather in between zones, kind of like when a cutscene comes on and it gives you that respite from all the exhilaration and thrills of the combat and gameplay. I kind of feel like Saul Valley is that. I might spend an hour or two in a zone, exploring, finding secrets, fighting enemies, boss fight, upgrades. And, after an hour or two of doing that, going out into Saul Valley and just cruising around for 5 or 10 minutes, mindlessly crunching into some green crystals, scanning, looking for secrets, it's fine. In fact, I would say it's more than fine. It is far superior to the hub in Metroid Prime 2. And I do understand those zones connected on the outer rim. I think they had morph ball tunnels that would boost you, but, they weren't really connected in any other way than that in the central hub. And it took just as long to go to the central hub into another area as it did to go to the outer rim, to go through the morph ball tunnel, to go to another area. So really, it didn't make any difference in the end. But yeah, those are my thoughts on that. I really like this game. I do. I have to admit, so my opinions on this game have been constantly evolving as I play it. And I think that where I stand now is in a completely different place than what I thought about the game even 1 or 2 days ago. As of right now, I think the one aspect I would say could have been better is with regard to how the maps in each individual zone only tend to block off a room or several rooms from, let's say, compared to previous games where they would block off an entire region of the map, so that when you came back later, it's like you had only been able to explore half the map up to that point. And then once you got that power up, now you can access that new area and explore the other half of the map. This game doesn't really do that. It does, don't get me wrong, it does block off sections of the map, but the sections that it blocks off aren't nearly as large as the sections blocked off in previous games, if you get what I'm trying to say there. I do think I prefer having larger sections blocked off. Having said that, this game narratively scripts you into backtracking. For example, after finding the elemental chips to get your ice shot upgrade and your heat shot upgrade and things like that. So because you're backtracking from a narrative point of view, having to backtrack to then explore half the map all over again, I don't know if that would have worked in this game. It has worked in previous games. I don't know how well it would have worked in this game. Maybe it would have. I'm not saying it wouldn't. I'm just saying I'm a little skeptical. I think you can have one or the other, right? Either you design it in such a way where you have to backtrack to explore a larger section of the map that you couldn't access previously, or in its place, you script the game to have you backtrack for other reasons, and instead just have you explore new areas, right? And I think both are valid, to be honest. I enjoy both of them. maybe there's a solution where you can kind of compromise and do both. And maybe that's something they'll explore in the next game. That'll certainly be something to watch for. And speaking of a next game, I think the strides Metroid Prime 4 Beyond makes to bring in a new audience is essential for the continuation of this series. If we look at the success of Metroid Prime Remastered, that game could not even hit 1.75 million sold. Now, I'm sure it made money, given it was just a remaster, but it's rumored, given the development cycle and wages in the United States versus other countries like Japan, Metroid Prime 4 could have cost up to $100 million. This game cannot fly on 1.5 million sales. It just can't. This game needs to be selling 2, 3, maybe even 4 million for Nintendo to say, yeah, this is worth our time. We want to invest in another Metroid Prime game. And I'm telling you now, if they cater to the segment of purists that want to veto any attempt at trying new things, any attempt to modernize the series, any attempt to drive the franchise forward, it is going to kill the Metroid Prime series once and for all. It's going to be just another Star Fox, just another F-Zero. I do not want to see that happen, okay? This series needed to bring in new fans. And I think the way it's done that is actually pretty brilliant. I really don't understand why people have had such an allergic reaction to A, the characters, and B, the desert. The characters, not only do I not dislike them, I think they are freaking phenomenal. I think they are the single best addition to this series in this game. Now, the Soul Valley and the bike aspect, that I can certainly understand where other people are coming from with their perspective on that. I get it, you know. Do I enjoy it? Yeah, I actually do enjoy it. I think it's fun. Again, like I said before, it's a fine distraction after an hour or two in a zone doing exploration and combat. You know, taking a few minutes to cruise around and crunch some crystals. It's a nice way to decompress. It's an intermission. It's a way to break up gameplay, give you a little variety before you dive in for the next 1 or 2 hours, right? I do think that having green crystals as a progression requirement was a bad choice. Will it affect my experience? I doubt it. Because I've been getting them naturally as I play, I'm not going to be in a situation where I have to farm them for an hour at the end of the game. But even if that was the case, let's say you ignored them completely. You didn't grab a single crystal all game long. You get to the end and it says, hey, you need X amount of crystals. You're going to have to hit Soul Valley and farm them for a while. You know what? Every other Prime game had a fetch quest at the end that took at least an hour to complete, sometimes more. I don't think a 1 hour fetch quest at the end of the game is unprecedented here. I really don't. And to be perfectly honest, I think cruising around on that badass bike to find crystals is far more enjoyable than backtracking tip to toe through all the areas you've previously explored with no new hidden rooms or areas you haven't reached yet, right? It's all areas you've been through 100 times before. There's nothing else to find there. You're just retreading old ground for the sake of finding some keys. And don't get me wrong, I kind of like that, even though everyone else complains about it. It never bothered me that much. But I'm speaking from the perspective of others here, right? From their point of view. I don't think having that fetch quest, even in its worst case scenario, even then, I don't think that's as bad as the previous game's in-game fetch quests. And so if you say, well, The potential fetch quest in this game, something you can actually do naturally as you play, to where there isn't a progression roadblock at the end, something you could not do in Prime 1, could not do in Prime 2, right? But even then, even if you put it all off to the end, the fetch quest in this is not as bad as the previous entries. It's just not. It's more entertaining to engage in. It doesn't take nearly as much time. And as I mentioned, you can do it naturally as you play through the game. So on a pound for pound comparison, if you're going to say this game is held back by that, then you have to be consistent. That's all I want to see here. Be consistent. If you're going to say that makes this game mid-tier, then you have to say Prime 1 is mid-tier. You have to say Prime 2 is mid-tier. And I can't really remember, but I'm pretty sure Prime 3 also had a fetch quest. If I'm wrong, correct me on that. I just haven't played in so long, I don't remember. And again, on the characters, I compare them to the Galactic Federation troopers in Prime 3, and I think, well, they did the exact same thing there. The only difference is their designs are way better in this game, way improved. They have way more personality and bespoke names and reasons to care about them. Something I absolutely could not say for any of the Galactic Federation troops in Metroid Prime 3. So if you're going to say that really holds the game back and makes it mid-tier, then you have to say Prime 3 is mid-tier. And maybe you do say that, but as I look at the scoreboard, I see Prime 3 sitting at a 90. And this game is objectively superior to Prime 3 in literally every respect. Galactic Federation troopers, superior. Hub world, superior. In-game fetch quest, I'm pretty sure that's superior. Unless Prime 3 didn't have one, but I'd be very shocked if it didn't, given the fact that previous two did. But I could be wrong. I've replayed Prime 1 and 2 at least 3 times. I've only played Prime 3 once. And I think the bosses in a comparison to Prime... Well, Prime 3 did have the bounty hunters. I have to give it that. I have to give Prime 3 credit there. I think the bounty hunters were pretty rad. But Prime 4 holds its own. Let's just say that. Okay? But really, when I compare Prime 4 to Prime 3, pound for pound, from an objective standpoint, I find Prime 4 the superior game in literally every respect. Now, a lot of people see Prime 1 as the best in the series. Again, I find it to be the weakest in the series. And yes, that includes with Prime 4. I think Prime 4 is better than Prime 1. I'm not sure if it tops Prime 2 Echoes. Prime 2 has always been my favorite. I love Light and Dark Aether. Everybody complain. And that's the thing. People forget. Like, if Prime 2 came out today, could you imagine if they held it to the same standard they're holding Prime 4 to? Oh, it's got ammunition counters for the light and dark beam and the annihilator beam. Oh, your health constantly drains when you're in the dark world and you have to go in the light bubble and you have to stand there to farm your life and get your health back and just stand there for 5 minutes as it slowly creeps up. Oh, there's a huge fetch quest at the end of the game. Oh, the Boost Guardian is so unfair. If that game had released instead of Prime 4, would it have gotten the 90 plus, Metacritic rating that it received? Just asking the question. Maybe you think it doesn't deserve the score it got. I think it does, right? All I'm saying is, for all the things you can look at Prime 4 at and say, critically speaking, this holds the game back, you could look at Prime 2 and make just as many criticisms that would be just as, if not more, valid. You could look at Prime 3 and make just as many, if not more, criticisms that are equally valid. And so that's why I think Prime 4 has gotten a bit of a bad rap. It's gotten a little bit of unfair treatment. I think people are being too harsh. And part of it, I think, is just the fact that the Metroid Prime base has such a purist mindset. I mean, the fact people were literally freaking out over characters that get 5 minutes of cutscenes each. 5 minutes. And there's what? 6 characters? So you get half an hour of cutscenes. And keep in mind, time spent in a cutscene does not take away from time spent out in the world exploring. It's just in addition to. So it's not taking away anything. It's just adding to the world building. It's adding to the lore. It's giving you more to build on top of that experience, right? But anyways, I think I've rambled on enough. But the one thing I did want to say, I wanted to finish my thought there, was yes, there are purists, but I don't think that's it. I think the internet has a tendency, in a world where, most games are not a Balan Warner world, where most games are not a Sonic 06, right? To where you don't really have to worry about actual bad games. Even the slightest imperfections become worthy of mass hysteria in the eyes of many. Little tiny imperfections get magnified, because people don't really have anything substantial to complain about. If we were getting really bad trash games, people wouldn't be nitpicking these little things, And so I guess it just speaks more to, how good we have it. When people get all bent out of shape because, God forbid, a character talks for 5 minutes in a game, or God forbid, I have to drive a bike across a hub world for 60 to 120 seconds. The game is ruined. Yeah, come on. And the internet it's either 0 or 100, and there's also a tendency to dogpile. Things become popular to hate. We've actually seen it this entire year, ever since the Switch 2 launched. Because of the $80 games and the key cards, people just went berserk. And they started making all kinds of videos trashing Nintendo. Anti-consumer this, anti-consumer that. Nintendo is the devil. And look, I'm not saying those criticisms weren't valid. In fact, I agree with them. I don't think that I agree with the extent of the reactions people had, but I agree with the criticisms on a fundamental level. But ever since then, it's just been nonstop hysteria. Switch 2, mass hysteria. Mario Kart World, mass hysteria. Pokemon Legends, mass hysteria. Here we have Metroid Prime, mass hysteria. And people were determined to be hysterical about this game from the jump. From the moment they showed the bike, people were losing their freaking minds, right? Then it was the marketing. People were losing their freaking minds. Then it was previews. And there's a character that talks. People were losing their freaking minds. Then we get the game. Oh, there's a hub world. People were losing their freaking minds. We live in a culture where overreaction is the norm, where hot takes on social media dominate our discourse. And unfortunately, the more radical and extreme the opinion, the more attention it gets. And so people are trained to respond in this way, right? And I'm not saying everybody's like that, but everybody watches content creators who are like that, and they see the posts online that are like that. And if you think that doesn't subconsciously affect them, I've got a bridge to sell you. Anyways, I've said enough. Bottom line, I really like the game. I hope you're enjoying it too. If you're not, I really do apologize for you. I feel sorry. I wish you were enjoying it like I was. I really do. I wish everybody could feel the way I feel, because I am having the time of my life. But hey, you've always got 2D Metroid to look forward to. That's not going anywhere. So, maybe that'll be more up your alley. But thanks for listening. And I'm going to get back to this game.